Good afternoon, listeners on ZJB, on the Ministry of Comms and Works Facebook page. My name is Jenzel Skerritt. I'm the PRO for the Government of Montserrat. This afternoon, I'm here with the Honorable Dr. Sammy Joseph, and we're on another episode of From the Minister's Chair. Dr. Joseph, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jenzel, and how is everything going?
Well, everything's going good so far, and I am, interested to hear first of how has it been for you over your opening remarks as far as, being the minister, and how are things going with you so far?
Well, things are going good, and as you know, I started this show From the Minister's Chair because one of the fundamental things that I believe is transparency in government. Because we have to understand and ask ourselves always, what is the purpose of government? Why were you elected? Why do we have elections? Why do you elect people? So we have to answer that question, what's the purpose of government? One of the answers, not the only one of the answers is that the purpose of government is to serve the people that place you in that position. And the purpose of government, I'm going to repeat that, the purpose of government is to serve the people that elect you. It's not to serve yourself or your party or a specific set of interest groups, but the people in general. Now, people in general do not all have the same ideas, they do not have the same things that they want. So certain decisions that are made are going to make some people happy and they're going to make some people unhappy. But you still have to make the decisions based on the best advice you receive. And in order for the public to understand the reasoning why certain decisions are made, they need to have the information. So to have the information, that's where transparency comes in. You have to be able to tell the people what your ministry is doing, how much money do you have, what are the problems that you're facing, what is it that you're trying to accomplish. To see, one, that the public sees what you're doing, and two, to understand if what you're doing is something the public wants or is something the public is interested in or is something that's to the benefit of the country. Because you can think that something is good and something is for the benefit of the country, but really it's your idea and the people around your idea and is not benefiting the entire population. So in terms of telling the people information so that they understand why is it that you're doing what you're doing, so in that end transparency is important. And in the budget speech I'm going to go through some stuff that's coming up sometime in June. I'm going to go through some stuff that the ministry is going to be doing to make sure that we have more transparency, that the people understand exactly how this ministry is functioning. The other thing that we must understand is that when you set a goal, so when this ministry sets a goal or when the government sets a goal and you start going towards that goal, there are going to be distractions along the way, but you cannot get distracted by every little petty issues. There are people that are going to try to bring up all kind of petty issues that really have absolutely nothing to do with the government, the governance of the country, and try to blow it up into this big thing, and they expect you to respond and they expect you to answer to all these things. There's only 24 hours in a day. There's only so much mental energy you have.
That's right.
And you cannot be distracted by every petty issue that people are throwing at you to try to distract you from your path. So there are some people out there who things happen and people keep messaging me and say, oh Sam, you need to answer that, you need to respond to that, you need to go on radio and deal with that. You do not have time, and you don't have time to be responding to every nonsense. There's a certain plan that we came in, there's a certain plan that I have that I've started to explain to these shows and that I'm going to keep on explaining to these shows, that I'm going to go through with the budget speech, and that's the plan of the ministry, not to get distracted by when you're going down the road, that every dog that barks, you feel you must take up a stone and throw at it. Sometimes you just cross the other side of the road and keep going on your journey. No journey is going to happen straight. If a plane is flying from Montserrat to Antigua, there's going to be winds, there's going to be course corrections, but you have a general direction that you're going and you make adjustments to end up in your goal. So in my opening, I'm just to say, Genzil, that we must understand why we get elected, because I know you have that dream also. Why we get elected is to focus on a goal of making things better for the electorate and leave the petty stuff and all these distractions that you see at the side. Let other people deal with that and focus on what you're doing. So that's why I've started back this show. We have gone through COVID, we have gone through everything, and I've gone through, we're still going through it, but some of the major issues that were happening have now been passed, and it's now time for us to move on to see how we can coexist with it. So I'm starting back this show. Hopefully again it'll be a regular occurrence so that I can tell the people of Montserrat what this ministry is doing so we can all move along together.
All right, Dr. Sammy. Just for the listeners that are tuning in, you're listening to an episode here of From the Minister's Chair. I'm going to be interviewing Dr. Sammy this afternoon. Dr. Sammy, we're just coming out of the lockdown. And as you know, persons would have been home, but in the ministry, the essential workers and other departments would have had to have some function. Would you like to outline some of the things that the ministry has been doing while in lockdown? Because lockdown was a long period, and some people haven't been out for a while and won't understand the dynamics that were happening behind the scene. Could you speak a little bit towards?
Because we know that lockdown occurred, and one of the reasons, and the main reason, was to protect the lives of people and to stop the virus from transmitting, which required that a lot of government workers were now working in a different environment, either working at home or some of the functions that they would have been doing were no longer necessary. And we know that the majority of the work, let's put it that way, and a lot of the work was done by the health staff, and we must congratulate them, we must thank them for all the work that they have done. The police and the defense force, social services, nurses, doctors, and all these people that were working hard to make sure that we are safe and everything functions. They were the ones that were carrying the majority of the load. Then you had education, who had to figure out how to get children educated, how to deal with basically the students. Then you had social services, who now had to, a lot of issues. What I'm trying to say, my ministry itself, Ministry of Communication, Works, Energy and Labor, was not directly affected. I mean, the projects had to get shut down, but in terms of work, staff, and doing things, it wasn't as impacted as the other ministries. So one of the things that happened is that, okay, you're one government and these things that happen. How do you now assist in the national effort? Because the country cannot shut down and the country must continue. So in certain departments, certain things obviously continue. Because we had energies under me. The energy director and his team still kept working because we have a green energy renewable plan that we're working on that was worked on and I'm going to update the public on that in another program. So that happened. Then agriculture wanted to do some projects in terms of clearing lands for agricultural purposes. So what happened is that Ministry of Communication and Works partnered with them in terms of the equipment to get those land cleared. So that happened during the lockdown period that we worked alongside the ministry to try to bring up farming because it's one government. The other issue that came up is that when we realized when lockdown occurred and we had to give out the social payments, the volumes was greater than what was anticipated. So this ministry staff assisted in that effort. So a lot of the work was done in this office, was done in the conference room, and a lot of the ministry staff did come in during the lockdown period to assist in the processing of paperwork because we knew it wasn't going fast enough and because the volumes was greater than what was initially expected. A lot of the staff from this ministry did come in and did assist in the effort to try to push through the payments and help with some of the collating of the data. So things like that were done in the ministry. The capital projects, things that could have done in terms of paperwork and processing things happened. All the stuff in the port, the pre-qualifications, the preparing of the tender documents, all of that was done. In terms of the hot mix plant, the qualifications, the tender documents, all of those were prepared so that when we come out and people are now coming back to work, we're in a position that we're not starting from scratch. We have, in some sense, a running start so that we can catch back up to where we were supposed to be and the country can move forward.
I understand, Dr. Sammy, and despite the ongoing issues as a result of COVID-19, all the capital projects under the Ministry of Commerce and Works are still on schedule. As part of your ministry's direction with nation building, residents will be looking forward to some positive news from you as it relates to the timelines and the impact from these projects. Can you firstly briefly outline the upcoming capital projects, just briefly, so our listeners could have an understanding?
Well, the ones that's not the most visible one, because anybody know who's driving and you have to go through St. Peter's and that area and going to the S-corner, what we call the S-corners, you do realize there's a lot of work going on at the side of the road. And for those of you people that have been following what's happening, that's due to a fiber project that's coming to Montserrat. Basically, a cable that's going to bring, greater bandwidth so that we have more capacity to do stuff with the internet on Montserrat. So that project got paused a little. It has now recommenced and it is on schedule to finish on time. The other project that we have is the solar projects panels should have gone up by the airport. That has been held up a little because, as we know, traveling is difficult, and rules about who comes into the island, and because of our lockdown rules, that is in pause, and there's discussion still about how will that proceed, how will the people come in and work, do they still want to come in? So those discussions are happening, and an update will be given on that. The lighting project has been paused again, but that will continue. We're going to get the island lighted. The Cavallo Hill Road project is now cast and is now just to be cured, and then you have the Mars Hill Road project to recommence. The port is still in discussion, the same kind of idea. The world is in a lockdown, how do you deal with people coming in to work? So those discussions are happening, but in terms of the pretender qualifications and things like that, that is being done. Is just now a finalization. How would you deal with contractors? How would you deal with people coming into the island and work? It is a safety, risk, reward scenario that still has to be decided. So those are the main projects that are there and that we are still working on.
I'm just going to take you back to the fiber optic project a little bit. How much longer do you think, let's get a little bit more speaking, how much longer do you think? Because it has been going on, it has paused, and now it has started back. For the general public, just the listeners, could you give us an idea of the exact how much time is remaining on this particular project?
By early August, we expect the cable to be laid and all of that to be completed. So that's the timeline we are working on, assuming the ship comes and everything works right. By early August, that project should be done. And as we keep pointing out, that's the first phase of the project. Because there was the telecoms were basically arguing that they don't see it financially viable for them to pay to bring a cable into the island. So the government of Montserrat, through the other funding agencies, agreed to fund that part of the project. So we're going to bring the project, and then the telecoms are now going to connect to that fiber and take it to the homes. So hopefully when that project is finished in August, the telecoms will now be in a position to take the information from that fiber and distribute it around Montserrat, and then we can start see things happening.
So now we have this brand new service, we have this fiber optic. We're going to need something to control our uses, how we think, how we govern using this fiber optic. Tell us a little bit about the ICT laws now, Dr. Sammy, as it relates to things upcoming for the ministry that will set the policies in place for the country that will allow us to go forward.
And that's a key point, Jensen, and you know, it seems like trivial, but it's a key point. We, in some sense, Ministry of Communication, Works, Energy and Labor, we concentrate a lot on infrastructure. And a lot of governments come in and they concentrate a lot on infrastructure. But you have to ask the question, why is it do you have the infrastructure? Is it for infrastructure sake? And we a lot of time miss that point, which is one of the reasons why I don't think we develop as fast as we could. Because we concentrate a lot on the buildings, we concentrate a lot on the fiber, but why do you have it? So I'm going to come to your question. So I just want the public to get that into mind and to start changing our thinking. If you put in fiber, why is it that you have fiber? If you put a port, why is it do you have a port? If you build a road, why did you build that road? To understand that's just one step that the government does. But there's another step above that where the citizens and the entrepreneurs and the business people need to come in and need to take advantage of those to actually get the economy going. So government would do its part, put in some of this infrastructure, but unless we have the second part where the business people, the entrepreneurs, the creatives, and the investors do their part, you're still not going to progress. So government does its first part, we manage to get infrastructure, we're going to bring the fiber. You need, as I pointed out, you need laws, rules, and regulations to govern internet activity. You know, have things online, you know, have people transacting money online, you know, have children online. You have human behaviors, let's call them undesirable human behaviors that exist, and you have to find ways to mitigate against them. You have issues about who owns things. So there's a suite of legislation that has been prepared and that we are going to pass forthwith. The first ones that we're working right now and will be coming to the public for consultation to get their views, because we do believe that you need to hear what people say before you pass some of these laws to make sure we haven't forgotten anything. And as I pointed out at the beginning, we're here to represent people. So there's a cybersecurity law that by the end of this month will go out to consultation, which deals with cybercrime. What do you allow to do online in terms of protecting of children, in terms of what can you say on social media, in terms of libelous material, what are you allowed to to say? Was it fear to people that you should be saying about them? Is it true? So basically, update of our libel laws that will be in it. How do you deal again with money transactions and cybercrime, cybersecurity? How do you deal with protection of children? How do you deal with who can post whose picture and whether you can post certain children pictures without their permission? All that are in the law, so the public will have its input before that actually goes to the Legislative Assembly. There's also an Electronic Transaction Act, because now that we're going online and we're talking about doing all of these transactions online with money, you're going to need rules to protect people from those. So those are the two main ones that we're trying to get through and to try to get those passed. There are some other ones that are a little bit more complicated, but are required, because there's a copyright law which deals with if you produce a piece of work, whether music, software, writing, songs, who owns it, how does the right go, those needs to be clear, because if you're going to set up a software industry here or a creative industry or your music industry here and you're putting virtual stuff online, issues of ownership and rights to material and how do you get compensated have to be resolved. So you have the hard part, let's call that the hard, not hard as in difficult, hard as in feeling. So you have the hard part of bringing the infrastructure of the fiber. Then you need the soft part of the laws and regulations that are going to govern the businesses. So after you have those, you now need the players to actually do something about it. So let's do the basketball analogy. So you could build a court and you could have the referee and the rules, but unless you have teams playing, you're not going to have any basketball. So to go back to my point, after we have the fiber is in, after we put the rules in for the governance of internet activity, we are still going to need the assistance of the public, the diasporas, investors, creatives, business people, young people, old people, middle-aged people, to take advantage of these things with the assistance of government and get something done. And I'm going to keep repeating this point because we as a nation have become, in some sense, look to government for everything. Government has its functions, but we also have to look to the private sector. We can't just be talking about building the private sector, and don't look to it. So after those things are going, we need the private sector to do its part. And I agree, I know some people out there saying this, so I'm going to say it. I agree that government will have to do its part to assist the private sector, whether in terms of training, whether in terms of financial assistance, whether in terms of encouragement, whether it's in terms of preparing a place for them to go and work. That is going to be needed, and my ministry is working on those. Because as you know, Genzil, when I came in, I did a course was done on e-commerce. We normally do courses in the summer for children, and I'm currently working on trying to get a center for the creatives to meet and to discuss things. And I know the Premier has discussed getting financing for innovative businesses. So yes, the government is going to do that part, but I know it's going to become my refrain this afternoon, but I'm going to keep saying it. We also need the creatives out there in the society and the innovators to come forward to give their ideas. And there are going to be roadblocks. There are going to be people who are against you. There are going to be, it's the nature of the beast. There are going to be times when you feel frustrated, but you have to persevere because there's a greater goal that we have to strive towards.
Indeed, Dr. Sammy, and it's all about the overall goal and where we're going. I want you to now take off your ICT hat, and now you're going to go into the labor segment of this interview. And as you know, as the Labor Minister, there were some policies put in place to assist businesses. Tell me how your feelings would be and how essential was it for you to assist and make sure that this was going forward so that the labor force would be beneficial and benefit from the policies that were put in place.
You see, in the end, if we go back to what's the purpose of government, it's people. You're here to assist people. So all the things that you do with education, with healthcare, and with business, that's on the surface. But you're doing these things because you're trying to help people. You're trying to get people more educated so they live a better life. You're trying to build a hospital and do healthcare so that people are more healthy. You're creating businesses so that people get jobs and have money to take care of themselves and their family and loved ones. So you must always remember that people is at the center with all these other things that connect back to people. So you go through a lockdown situation and people are unemployed. And you ask yourself, who do you give the money to? Who do you try to assist? But then you realize it's people you have to assist, so you try to kill two birds with one stone. The businesses cannot, because of the lockdown, they can't function, cannot afford to pay their workers. You don't want to end up in a situation where the ongoing nature of the business ceases. So, to ensure continuity of the business so that when we come out, so in other words, they don't have to lay off people and then try to find them back. Create a mechanism where they can keep the workers. So the government of Montserrat decided, instead of just give the businesses money or just let them go to social welfare and collect money, let them stay in the business, provide money to the businesses to assist these people, because I say in the end, it's the workers and the people that you're trying to assist. So was the main reason for that policy. And to compare it, if you look at when the housing crisis occurred in America, what the American government decided to do at that time was, okay, the banks are not getting money because people are not paying their mortgages, so they gave the banks the money. One other thing they could have done was to give the people the money to pay their mortgages, so the banks would have still got the money and the people wouldn't have had that expense. So you have to learn from experiences like that. So you give the businesses, instead of just, in other words, just give social welfare the money and just let people go. Try to maintain some semblance of continuity of the business, so that when you come out and the business is actually open, as you're seeing now, they just continue because there was money available for them to pay the staff. The staff is still there, so everything just continues smoother otherwise. So as I said, as a Labour minister, the goal was always, and my goal and the other cabinet members and the members of government, was to ensure that people continued, and as a sub thing to that, the business would also continue.
Excellent. And I listened to you talk, and I realized that today we are June 5th, 2020, and this government has only been in for approximately 6 months. Because if you look at December, that was a festival month, and we're getting into government. But now, what would you say from your ministry were the three things that would have been most impactful in your mind, that would have happened, and things that you would look to continue on going forward?
I had 3 main goals. Okay, if I try to count. Might miss one, I have it in the right order. But one of my main goals, which we expanded in the budget speech, is to try to reduce our dependence on fossil fuel. There's some data, when you look at it, that is just horrible. Like 40% of our GDP is spent on fuel, basically, and all that money goes out of Montserrat. So Energy Department is working on that. There's a plan, there's a task force that is in place to finalize some recommendations. Is at the end of the 5 years, if you could have the project started, to get as close as possible to renewable sources as you can. You're not going to get completely there. Get as close as you can without raising the price of electricity. You have to remember that. In the end, it's people. So that's one of my main goals, to try to get close to 100% renewable in terms of commercial production, as you can. The other one is, we realized due to COVID, and even before, when I came in, because I started discussions prior, the world is going through a fourth industrial revolution in terms of ICT and digital stuff. Is to set up Montserrat in a way that we'd have digitized most of our government services, and to also set up an environment in which software developers and people that want to come in, and tech people and IT people, bloggers, etc., can come in, make Montserrat the home and grow the economy from that, which is the reason for the laws and continuing the fiber project. And these discussions that were happening with the software developers, what can they do, what assistance they need, trying to get the ICT center, trying to get all these things set up. So if at the end of my 5 years, I could be in a situation where I've said, because these things are all in place, these are some young businesses that have started, and they're now ready to grow, I would have feel I've accomplished what I wanted to do in terms of ICT. So that's, like I said, energy, ICT. Those goals are 4 months. There are some other projects that are there. I don't know how to rank them, because you do need a port.
Yes.
So that project is there, and how you rank that has to be done. And there are some things in labor that you may not be capital intensive, but they have to be done, because there are some issues. If you're talking about working from home, it means that some part of our legislation will have to be amended, and things that you might not even think about. Because, for example, something you might think is trivial. I'm here sitting down at this desk. So this is my office. I have a desk and my computer, and I'm working. When I tell you, Genzil, to work from home, where do you work from? Is the employer going to provide for you the desk to work, or do you have to take it out of your pocket now to produce your own desk? If you do come to government, let's deal with government. If I do come to government, I get the desk. When I ask you to work from home, who provides it? It's now your responsibility. And if you're not working like how most people do, you put your laptop on your bed and you start doing your work. And you start getting carpal tunnel syndrome, and you start getting backache because you're crouching over to type and your lighting is not right. You have safety issues that is different. You also have issues if somebody's at home and they don't have the proper desk and the children are there. You don't have that. You can get more work done because your environment is better. Are you going to be penalized because your work environment is different than the other person because we have said that you can work at home like that? So there are things in our labor laws that we think are trivial, but they have to be looked at and updated now that we're talking from at work, home policies and things like that in terms of how labor code is someplace here. So you might not think it's capital intensive, but when you think about the safety and health aspect of people and the fairness of who can get a job and who will get promoted because of the home environment, you cannot go back that we did all this work to say an office has to have this environment. All of a sudden you put people home and they don't have the environment there, and who's responsible for fixing that? So those issues is also on the agenda. So I don't know how you rank that in the order. That's 4 items. I don't know what you will call the 3. Yeah. but those have to be. Definitely. Those have to be done.
Definitely interesting perspective to look at, Dr. Sammy. But at this junction of the interview, I must ask you your closing remarks, because you've given us a lot of information, and I'm sure the listeners would like to know some feelings of how you feel and how things are going on different levels. So you have a moment to give your closing remarks at this junction.
Everybody is talking about COVID. That's the big conversation. But from all indication, COVID is going to be with us for a while in the world. It's going to exist. And we have to find ways to live with it. We have to find ways, how do we deal with our border? How do we deal with tourism? How do we deal with our agriculture and our production? What are we willing to do? What decisions are we willing to make as a country to survive? Some of them might not be easy at the beginning, but we have to ask ourselves, are you willing to do them? Some of them may take, we're looking for quick fixes, so let's take agriculture. Things take a time to grow. So the fact that you plant something today, you're not getting it today, is going to come later. But the plans have to go into place now. So while the plans are going into place, a lot of time we need patience. You can't meet certain things a certain way. As a government, let's be honest and say, this is how we met things, this is where we want to go, and these are the things that we're putting into place, these are the resources that we have. We don't have unlimited amount of money, and I think that needs to be mentioned. I'm going to come to that. We don't have unlimited amount of money. You have a certain set of capital resources in money. You have a certain set of people that you're working with. You have a certain size of island that you're working with. Just be honest and say, this is what I met. Here's where I want to go. This is the part I'm going to do. And this is the part you, the people, have to do. Because unless we only have 4,000 or something people, unless all of us work together to get things done, 4 people in cabinet as elected members are not going to get it done. 5 people in government with the parliamentary secretary is not going to get it done. The civil servants is not going to get it done. The private sector is not going to get it done. It's everybody working together as a coherent unit with one vision and one plan that's going to get that done. And we have to make a decision as a nation, as a country, where are we going, where do we want to go, where we are, what are we willing to sacrifice to get these things done. And as I started at the beginning, a lot of time we get caught up in a lot of petty things that distract us from the ultimate goal. And we have to make a conscious decision when we wake up every morning to say, this is what I want to accomplish today, and eliminate a lot of the noise that's taking up your time, a lot of the arguments that you're getting caught up in, a lot of the trivial, just the trivial nonsense, basically, that you get caught up in. Ignore them. It takes effort, and it's easy to get all emotional and want to respond to people and how can they say that, how can they do that. Ignore it and try to concentrate on where you want to go. Also, be honest about the capacities that government has, the capacities that you as a business have, and the capacities that we as a people have, and what we can accomplish. Otherwise, you end up with a situation where you're asking us to lie to you. If you know government doesn't have unlimited amount of money, so yes, you would like to give everybody a free house, you would like to pave every road, you would like to give everybody a raise, you would like to provide laptops for all school children, you would like to do all of these things. You have a limited amount of money. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, how do you allocate that money in the best possible way? And how do you get more money? And to get more money requires that certain things are put in place now. So we're going to have to learn to sacrifice some short-term gains for the long-term result. We have to get our economy going. That involves working with businesses, putting the infrastructure in place, genuinely working with the business, not talking about it. It requires people to go out there and try new ideas and to innovate. It requires government to assist them. It requires us to not pull down one another because they're trying something. So you try to start a business and all of a sudden, oh, who Gens you think he be? Why you think you do that if I think I will give you money? That kind of thinking we have to start removing from ourselves. Because we have seen the activities that are taking place around the world now with all these protests and all these other things are happening. And we have to realize that because of our race and because of our color, we are starting off at a disadvantage because of historical reasons. And unless we tell ourselves as a people here and as a nation that we are willing to work with one another and we are willing to stop this nonsense about who's foreigner, who's Guyanese, and who's Jamaican, and who's that, we don't have, you shouldn't be doing it anyway. But the fact that we only have 4,000 something people, we have to remove that kind of thinking. We have to remove the thinking of Montserrat, Antigua, St. Kitts, and we have to start thinking Caribbean, we have to start thinking OECS, we have to start thinking CARICOM, and we have to start thinking greater than these petty things that seem to consume us, because we are not going to get to where we want to go unless we move together as one. So that's my final message. We have to ignore the pettiness, have a big goal at the end, and move towards it. And I want that to stay in people's head as I wrap up today.
Well, Dr. Samuel, I just want to say thanks again for having another episode of From the Minister's Chair, listening public, and I wish you all a good weekend. And over to you at ZJB.